So thank you, Chaplain Peppers, for joining us today and contributing your expertise to Fire Team Whiskey.
I'm very happy to be here.
And I just want you to kind of introduce yourself and talk about your background and what you do for the National Guard.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Chaplain Jeff Peppers. I have been an Army chaplain since about 2008. And before that, I was a pastor for 10 years. And before that, I was an infantry officer for 10 years before that. And before that, I was a Marine. So I've been all around still trying to decide what I want to do when I grow up. But I love being a chaplain. I love the military. I love being in the Army. And I love being a minister. So for me, it's the best of both worlds. So people say, well, why did you become a chaplain? Well, you know what? When you have a calling, you have to do your calling. Mm-hmm. And people in the military, law enforcement, medical, we all understand about calling. So that's why I do this.
Yeah. And I love that. And that's one of the reasons why I asked Chaplain Peppers. Not only is he my favorite chaplain, but and I've known him since 2009. We've responded together for a lot of emergencies with the military. But I love the fact that you were, and this is the most respectful way to say it, you were a grunt before you were an officer.
I consider that a compliment.
Yes, I think it's a compliment. But that's why I just love that you have that background, because it makes you approachable. And, that's kind of what we're all about with Fire Team Whiskey is, you have your Fire Team Whiskey cadre helping you, and we are the experts in fitness, but we're also approachable. We're on this team together, so it kind of makes me feel like you're more of an approachable guy, because you've been in the trenches, you know what it's like to be there and scrub toilets with a toothbrush.
I think it works.
All right, so my first kind of official question for you in your role as a chaplain. So Fire Team Whiskey prides itself in covering all aspects of health. So we not only cover the nutritional side and the fitness side, but we have our warrior wellness side that is required as well. So all of our participants have to watch 10 warrior wellness videos, and they're all on different aspects of health. So we are touching upon the importance of spiritual health in this interview, and that is I think a huge component of wellness. So I just wanted to ask you, what is kind of your professional opinion about what spiritual health is? I mean, what is that?
Well, there's two components to spiritual health. There's health, and of course we all know what health means. Either you have health, or if you have health, you're at ease, and if you don't have health, you're at dis-ease. And but then the other component to that is spirituality. And spirituality, a lot of people consider spirituality and religion. They say, well, I'm not religious. Well, spirituality is a little bit deeper than just religion. I don't say just religion, but it may encompass religion. So somebody who may be very devout in his or her faith will typically have pretty good spiritual health if they apply those disciplines in their life and they feel like their life is aligning up with what they believe their core values to be. Somebody who is not particularly religious may still be a spiritual person. And spirituality, you can define it even down to just in the Army, we say Army values, but just good old American values of doing what is right. And I like to say this, there's nobody in any religion to whom love your neighbor does not apply. It applies to all of us, whether someone is a Christian or a Muslim or Jewish or an atheist. We all should love our neighbors, and that would be one example of an inner value that we have. When someone is living consistently with their inner values, they have a sense of well-being, and so spiritual health is really just a matter of living out your life in a fashion that is consistent with those values that you hold to be the deepest and the most meaningful values to you. I would put that in the same category as spirituality. Religion helps greatly And by religion, of course, I mean, somebody's particular faith. Because it helps us to align what is important with us and to align our living after those inner values that we have.
My second question is, so what do you think is the link between like a healthy person? So I say, I'm a healthy person, Chaplain.
Okay.
And what is the link between that healthy person and their spiritual health? I mean, can you have one and not the other? Or, can you have both?
Well, I would say that there are people that have profound spirituality and whose lives marry up nicely with their values. They may be a very religious person or a very spiritual person, have great spiritual health, and they may have an illness, or they may have an injury or something, so they might not have physical health, but they would have spiritual health. At the same time, I think that it's, and I'm not an expert at these kinds of studies, but I know that there are links that have been proven between someone's spiritual health and the rest of their holistic health. So I like to look at spirituality as one of those components of our holistic health. So you say that you're healthy. What does that mean? Does that mean that you're free of disease? Does it mean you eat the right things and you have a good, you could have a good heart stroke volume and all those? But also, are you living in a way that tends to those deep values that you have? Mm-hmm. And are you spiritually healthy as well?
Yeah.
So of course, I guess you could say the same thing about mental wellness too. So physical, spiritual, mental, I think the three of them all go together. So the holistic term of healthiness would encompass all three.
Yeah. And then also just to kind of elaborate on what you just said, or have you elaborate, I think of, in many religions, they talk about, your body is your temple. And, that how that is an important part of your faith is to care for your body, because that's the one that was given to you as, this is your gift of life. And, I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts about that.
Well, if you believe that your life on this earth has meaning and that you live for something greater than yourself, and so I'm just expanding that a little bit beyond just the religions to all spirituality, then there's a bounden duty then to see that vehicle, that vessel by which you do that living is cared for. You would, if you have a vocation of life that involves spending a great deal of time, or maybe a vocation or a profession that involves spending a great deal of time driving your car, you want to make sure that your car is maintained and adequately, and you have sent it in for services, and you have to have your car healthy. Well, I guess that, if you look at your spiritual, I look at us as being spiritual beings that have physical health and that have mental health. Now, somebody else might say, I look at us as being mental beings and that have spiritual, to each his own. Mm-hmm. In my view, we're spiritual beings. And so we've been given this body to care for. And if we allow that vessel by which we manage our spirituality, by which we live out our spirituality, if we allow that vessel to fall into disrepair, then it doesn't say much for our commitment to really living out those values.
Yeah. And another question I had for you, and I want to get your take on it, is, most of our Fire Team Whiskey participants are first responders and military members, current and former. And, I really wanted to touch upon this subject, especially, in light of that, mm-hmm. because, our military members and first responders are exposed to a lot of traumatic things on a daily basis. So I wanted to, have you kind of touch upon the importance of, especially for first responders, to work on and be aware of this aspect, to work on their spiritual health and how that kind of ties into all that trauma.
Right. As the difficulty also with the first responders too is they run in shifts, and so they don't always have access to their mosque or to their temple or their church. But I think keeping yourself spiritually fit goes a long way towards keeping your mental grip on things. And sometimes the things that we experience, particularly when we're experiencing suffering of others, this can move us to the very depths of our soul. And the spirituality that must be maintained is here within the deepness of our heart. And sometimes the things that we experience go so far as to tear away at what appears to be the foundation of our living, maybe gradually or maybe suddenly. But those inner moorings and that what we really believe in is challenged. And so we have to, physical fitness, you have to work out. Spiritual fitness, you have to work out. You have to be in touch with your spirituality. I look at the relationship between the physical, the mental, and the spiritual in this way. There was a staff officer that we had here in the Florida Guard who would he was a medical service officer, and we would, from time to time, we would have to discuss traumatic situations, and he would always make this caveat because he wasn't a shrink. You know, he would say, "Well, I don't deal with anything above the clavicles."
Yes.
But I say I deal with what's between the clavicles. And so if you look at the mental well-being is above the clavicles, and the spiritual well-being is between the clavicles, that's where resides the deep and inner meaning that we all have. And so what we want to do is help people to stay in touch with that wellness between the clavicles.
Okay, now we know how important spiritual health is. Okay, we've learned about what it is, how important it is, and why we need to be working on it. So, but how can somebody tell? I mean, you mentioned like PMCS, checking your oil and checking your car. How can you do PMCS? How can you check in with yourself and see where your spiritual health is? How do you do that?
For people that are of faith, they have kind of a shortcut, because no matter what faith you have disciplines of the faith. And almost every faith has some form of scripture reading, some form of listening to the thoughts of others that expound this faith for daily living. And they also have prayer and meditation. For those that are a-religious or non-religious, they can still, they might not call it pray, but they can still spend time in quiet, getting in touch with who they are. They can still listen when that little voice says, "You know what, something is not right here. Something I'm not living in a way that's in tune with my inner values." Or they can still say, "I don't even know what my inner values are. I need to spend some time contemplating that." So time spent contemplating the deep. Now, people who are religious often think of spirituality as coming from above, and that's fine if they associate their spirituality as being a dispensation from heaven, from God, and so. But ultimately, it resides within us, and we have to tend to and answer the question, what is important to you? What are the duties that we have to ourselves, to our families, to others, so that we can live in a way that we feel like we're at ease with our spirituality?
Yeah. All right. So now that we've kind of evaluated, where we're at individually with our own spiritual health, and maybe we find some things that need to be worked on. And you may have those tools, like you mentioned, in your own religion to help you with those things, or you evaluate your own tenets and kind of figure out what you need to shift in your life to do that. But I also want you to maybe touch upon how important it is to maybe seek out support if you're struggling and you're not able to kind of fix those things with those tools available to you, and you're still struggling with your spiritual health.
Again, that's another area where people that are religious have a leg up, because there are support networks within those religions. They can see the pastor of the church and get counseling, see the priest. You can be part of a small group. If you have a community of faith, whether it's in a temple or a mosque or a church, and so there is that support network. But you can have spiritual support networks anyway, just by seeing that the people that are important to you, that you choose to hang around with. Of course, you have family members, and you can't really choose them, right? But we can select to be with people whose values resonate with ours, who tend to live out the kinds of lived spirituality that is consistent with your own life. And so whether somebody is religious or not, they can find spiritual assistance. It's just that for people that are not engaged in a specific religion, they might have to do a little bit more work. For people that are not particularly religious, like you don't prescribe to a particular religious, and you don't know if you're spiritual yet, you can start by just taking a sheet of paper and doing your own value statement. And values are not necessarily love, peace, different things. It's what is important to you. If you could say, what are the top 3 things, and I just picked 3 arbitrarily, okay? Name the top 3 things that are important to your life. Write those down. Make your own values statement first. And to determine whether something is a value for you, and you could call them ideals, just what are the most important things in your life. And think in terms of spirituality, because you can't write money down there. Money doesn't count, okay? So, but write down the most important things in your life.
But lastly, Chaplain, I just wanted to kind of touch upon, I say all the time that being healthy sometimes is lonely. And I love that you kind of talked about being aware of the people that you surround yourself with, because that is a reflection of your values. And, sometimes doing what's right for you in the clavicle may be opposed by the people around you, or looked upon in a negative light by the people around you. So I just wanted to maybe have you give some encouragement to our participants who are making this major change in their life, and they're getting their spiritual health in order, they're getting their physical health in order, and they're getting their mental health in order, but maybe people around them don't understand these steps that they're taking and are maybe threatened by it, or it's just different. Whatever it may be, it's just not supportive. So just kind of maybe giving some encouragement to our participants who are making these major changes in their life to get healthier in every aspect.
Sure. Okay. The worst person to a smoker is an ex-smoker. And you don't want to be that kind of person that now you're on the road and you want to put the other person down. But eventually the other persons that you surround yourself with should see the value that you're getting from this. Not only the physical value, but the other aspects. And maybe they'll just come along and join you.
Well, thank you, Chaplain, so much for sharing your expertise in spiritual health with our Fire Team Whiskey participants. And I hope that you absorbed all of this information from our spiritual health expert. And thank you for watching, and thank you, Chaplain Peppers, for helping us out with our Warrior Wellness video.
Well, thank you for having me. And to anyone watching, I pray God's blessings for you, and may your journey to health be smooth and may it be steady. Always have faith and just keep pressing in. The journey may not be quick, but it's certain.